Harri got finally revealed for Pilmoon and it introduced a brand new playstyle. Let's talk about that. Stand up, Vanguard! Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to another edition of Cardfight Update, and today there was a lot of news today. Not only news for the physical card game, also for Vanguard 0. And arguably Vanguard 0 got a bigger information dump than the physical card game. But to not overload you guys with insane amount of news and information, I'm gonna split this up in two videos over 2 days. Today, in this video, we're gonna tackle everything for the physical card game, so the new reveals for VBT 9, the Butterfly Under Moonlight, the Robbie Labyrinth set with the whole Pilmoon and Harri reveals. And tomorrow we're gonna dive into the new Vanguard 0 reveals, news and updates, and we're gonna talk about the whole thing about the possibility of VP farming being dead, basically being killed off by Game Studio and Bushiroad themselves. But if you're interested in all that kind of stuff, then check in tomorrow when we're gonna dive in everything Vanguard 0 related and my personal opinion about the matter at hand. So with that explained, I need to clarify something that I reported wrongly in the previous Cardfight update for our future card reveals, as when we were talking about the upcoming set with Lambros and Tavas and Shiranui Arboro and that kind of stuff, I stated that that set is going to contain a new type of marker card, as that's printed on the box image itself, like it was seen on this image here. But I made a reading mistake while reading the katakana for that extra card type, as that's not a extra marker, that states a token card. And that basically tells us that this set is going to contain token cards, and as seen as Nubatama is in this set, that probably means the Evo Decoy Token. So what that actually entices is that that set with the Shiranui Arboro support engine or the support cards, there will also be support for the whole Evo Decoy Token mechanic. Now the question is, does that mean that Arboro himself will also work with decoy tokens, or is there just some generic support in general in that set that works with Evo Decoy tokens and Shiranui Arboro will do something else? There is a small possibility that those tokens aren't Evo Decoy tokens, as that's not 100% confirmed yet. But the probability of it not being the Evo Decoy token is way less than it actually being a Evo Decoy token. So for now, you can basically assume that that's the case. So with that clarified, let's dive into the new Pilmoon support, as we've got a lot of interesting cards. And we're gonna move around these support cards because there are a lot of interesting and intricate combos going on here. So we're probably gonna recall certain cards multiple times during the video to give you guys a better understanding of how this whole engine works. And we're gonna start off with the big boy himself, the main engine, the main boss unit of this new archetype for Pilmoon, as here we have Mask Magician Harri. And Harri got two very interesting skills, and everything will revolve around this. His first skill is Auto Vanguard Circle. When placed, choose one of your additional rearguard circles and it becomes a stage. We're gonna clarify that in a moment here. Until the end of that fight. So that means the moment you write it, those Excel circles will become a stage. So how does this work? During this fight, the stage becomes your only additional rearguard circle and move all the Excel markers to the stage. So basically, the moment you write Harri, all your Excel circles will combine into one massive Excel circle, and that is the only extra circle you can generate. So all these extra markers will stack up in power. So if you have two Excel 2 circles, then that Excel circle will have an additional 10k power. If you have two Excel 1 circle, then that circle will have an increase of 20k power. And either this can happen on your first write target, so the moment you write on grade 3, you go into Harri, then you have one circle that is a stage, and every time you rewrite or create more Excel circles, they will accumulate underneath that stage circle. So that can stack up multiple markers at the same time. But it can also work the other way around, and let's say you already written twice and you already have two Excel circles. The moment you write into this Harri, all those Excel circles will combine to one, and I don't know if they completely clarified this, but I assume they all will combine to the left front row circle, so basically where you create the first Excel circle. And if you have units on top of the circles that now are removed, those units will be retired. Basically the same way how it works when you have the new Link Joker stride that can destroy markers. Basically the same interaction, because those Excel circles will disappear. They all will move into that one circle that's the stage. And it's basically the same as you creating a bigger, better and more grandiose stage every time you progress during the game, when you create more circles or you keep rewriting into more grade 3s. So that's what's happening with the on the right skill. This stays active for the entire fight. So even if you write into another grade 3 that isn't Harri, it still will be active for the entirety of the fight. So keep that in mind for this skill. Then the second skill, and this is where the value engine comes from Harri himself, is act on Vanguard circle. Once per turn, cost Counterblast 1 and discard a card from your hand. Call up to 2 cards with Maggie in their different card names from your soul to the rearguard circle. And they get power plus 5 until the end of turn. If your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, you may call up to 4 instead of 2. So the first part of this skill is very similar to Golden Beast Tamer. Counterblast 1, you discard a card in Golden Beast Tamer in case you put it into the soul, and you call 2 units out of the soul. Very similar, only this is act, that was an auto, so we have an idea how much value you can generate out of this. The only difference here is that it will not allow you to multi-tech, but those units will inherently have more power. But at the same time, you are more restricted, as those units need to have different card names. You cannot call the same unit twice. They need to be different units. But the major thing here is that for 1 counterblast and 1 discard, you could potentially call 4 units and all of them get an increase of 5k power. And that's a lot of value you're getting for 1 counterblast and a discard. That's almost the same value you will get from the whole Silverthorn engine, as they also can, for 2 counterblasts and a discard, create a full board. This is very similar to that state, as you have less circles, as you cannot generate more than 1 extra additional circle. So this skill can almost fill out your entire board, no problem. But before we can really analyze and have an idea how strong this effect actually is, let's take a look at the 4 support Maggie cards that they revealed coincide to this card, as it's gonna be a whole amazing package. So let's take a look at the great ones first. And the first one we have here is Maggie Darkside Mirror Master. And what you're gonna see, for anybody that's familiar with the GR of Pale Moon, these Maggie cards are miniature versions of old school GR units. This was, I believe, the original Perfect Guard, but we also have some Strides returning in other great forms that are now miniature forms. Very similar to, if you're familiar with Yu-Gi-Oh!, like how the Toon monsters work. You have the Blue Eyes White Dragon, but you have also Toon Blue Eyes White Dragon. So this great one has the following abilities, and this is shared among all the Maggie, which makes them really good. Although, when retired from the Guardian Circle, you may put this card into your soul. So you can guard with them and put them into your soul. This is really good, as the main problem with the general sense of Pale Moon is that you don't necessarily want to guard with your key pieces, as the moment you guard with them, you won't have access to them for the rest of the game. But at the same time, you actually want to guard with them, as they have some good shield value, especially your grade 1s with a 10k shield. Now you don't have that predicament, because you can just guard with them and they will go into your soul, which then will set up for Harri, as these are the cards you want to then call out with Harri skills. So that's actually pretty good. But then the main value lies in their second ability, and for Darkside Mirror Master, that's Auto and Rearguard Circle. When placed by your unit's ability with Harri in its card name, counter charge 1. So when you call this card with Harri, you counter charge 1. We just seen that Harri can counterblast 1 and discard 1 to call 2 and potentially 4 units. So if you call this one out with that skill, you get that counterblast back. So then this skill becomes a discard, which is really good value you're generating right there. And now Pale Moon having a very solid countercharge engine at their hand is really good. But as we're gonna see with all the other Maggie cards, they have the same guard effect that they can put themselves in the soul, and they all have an effect that activate once they're called to the rearguard circle from the soul by the unit with Harri in its card name. So with that in mind, let's take a look at the second grade one, which is Maggie Flying Paraton, the original supporting grade 2 for the Harri engine. And its ability, again, is auto. When retired from the Guardian Circle, you may put this card into your soul, so it sets up, guard value, pretty good. And its unique ability is auto rearguard circle. When placed by your unit's ability with Harri in its card name, draw a card. Okay, so now we have the Mirror Master that refunds the counter charge, and Flying Peryton, the other grade 1, refunds the discard. So if you have both these grade 1s in your soul, the entire skill for Harri becomes free. That's really good, as that allows you to, for free, build a full field, give a lot of power, and at the same time set up for next turn, as you can potentially use its skill again next turn. So that's really, really good. And this just allows you to have a good solid draw engine. And this, for any premium players out there, these 2 grade 1s can be used in premium very effectively, as you have the whole stride mechanic where you copy the hard card's name. So it's not that hard to have a Harri card Vanguard while superior calling all these units. So these 2 grade 1s can be really good in premium Pale Moon as well. But with these grade 1s covered, let's take a look at the grade 2s. For the grade 2s, we have Maggie, Lunatic, Dragon. Now once again, it has the same skill. One auto, when retired from the Guardian Circle, you may put it into your soul. And its unique skill is Auto Regular Circle. When placed by a unit's ability with Harri in its card name, choose up to one of your opponent's rear guards, and your opponent put that unit into his or her soul. So now Pale Moon has spot removal, but very interesting spot removal, as it puts those units into the soul rather than just retiring them. In some instances, this is better, because not every clan or every deck can utilize their soul to the best capability, so putting them in the soul basically renders them useless. And maybe some clans can actually recover in the drop zone, but not really utilize the soul as much, so this could be a better pick. But against certain clans, you might not really want to use this ability and just let it go, because you're not forced to resolve the entire skill, just choose up to 1, so you can also choose to choose nothing. Because in a mirror match, you don't really want to use this skill, not at all. So that's something to keep in mind. It can be really good, but there are definitely scenarios where you might not really want to utilize this skill all that much. Now for the second grade 2, we have Maggie Prana. And once again, it has auto. When retired from the Guardian Circle, you may put this card into your soul. And second ability is Auto Regular Circle. When placed by a unit's ability with Harri in its card name, this unit and one of your Vanguards get power plus 10k until the end of turn. So this in itself becomes a 24k beater if it's called with Harri, because Harri also gives the units 5k power. But this then also turns your Harri into a 22k beater. This is pretty good. This allows you to rank up a lot of power for almost no cost. Because now that we've seen all the 4 cards, we can basically look back at Harri, and Harri has some really good options here. Because when it calls a full board, it gives also unit 5k power. So your side columns will get an additional 10k power. So with Prana, that column will have another 10k power. So you'll have a 37k column, a 27k side column, and then a Vanguard that swings for 22k column, because Prana gives the Vanguard an additional 10k power. And that effectively costs you 0 counterblast and 0 cards from hand to build all those units onto the board, so 4 units onto the board, without wasting any resource, because you counterblast 1, discard 1, then you countercharge 1, and then you draw back into that card. That's insane, because that allows you to then set up for next turn, and your opponent cannot really effectively deny you. The only issue here is the consistency of this, because you need to set up those cards in your soul, and as you've seen, there isn't really any soul charging going on except for guarding, so you need to actually draw into those pieces. But at the same time, it allows you to play way more defensively than any other Pale Moon deck in the early game, because you can just guard early game very aggressively, because all those cards will just go into the soul anyways. And at the same time, the consistency isn't all that bad, because you are riding up. So you will at least have a grade 1 and a grade 2 probably set up with all these right targets potentially. So that's actually pretty good. So there's already a lot of interesting things going on here with Harri. But we also have his first ability, that whole stage thing. So where does this stage come into play? Because all these cards we just talked about don't really interact with the stage. Well, there are 2 more cards they revealed that interact with the stage aspect of Harri. So we have the dolls themselves for the overall pressure. And then we got the supporting beast of Harri, the Pigeon, and his trusted dragon, which will be very interesting in this deck. Because let's take a look at the grade 2 Pigeon, which is Lore Pigeon Pop. And this grade 2 has the following abilities. Auto on the Regular Circle. When placed, put up to one card with Maggie in its card name from your drop zone into the soul. So this is pretty huge, because not only allows this to set up the soul on more occasions, because we can guard with units and put them into soul, but now also if they are retired or we heal them from the damage zone and put them in the drop zone, now we can put them back. And because this thing allows you to reuse those units, even if you call them out with Harri, because interesting thing here is to note, we don't shove things back into the soul like we've seen with Silver Thorn or Golden Beast Tamer, so things are vulnerable. But thanks to this Pigeon, we don't mind them being vulnerable, because then we can shove them back into the soul and then next turn use the Harri skill again to call them out to get their value. Because once the units are out on the board, they don't generate more value the following turn, as they're all unplaced from soul effects, and that's it, so keep that in mind. So this Pigeon helps with the consistency of that. Then also its second ability is, although Record Circle, at the end of the battle it attacked, if this unit is on stage, cost counter +1 and return this unit to your hand. Search your deck or drop zone for up to one Starry Pop Dragon, that's the other card that we're going to talk about, call to the stage, and if you search your deck, shuffle your deck. So this skill not only allows you to generate an additional attack, because it calls out another unit to the field, this is on the stage. That stage are extra Excel circles stacked on top of each other. So the first turn, it's probably just an additional 5k or 10k. So this unit can also hit for a pretty decent number. But because this unit then bounces itself back to the hand, it allows you to reuse its unplace effect, which makes it very, very effective, as you only need one copy of Lore Pigeon Pop in your hand and you're actually basically done. You don't need multiple copies, as it keeps rebounding itself back to the hand. As you can say the Counterblast can be a bit tricky at certain points, but keep in mind, Harri's Counterblast most likely will refund itself. So this Lore Pigeon Pop is probably the only unit that's actually actively using your Counterblast and wasting resources in this equation. So keep that in mind how you use this. So that's actually really, really good, as it keeps allowing to set up your soul. It allows you to keep reusing all those Dole cards, which is actually pretty good, and that's what Harri really needs. But with that said, let's take a look at Starry Pop Dragon, which is the unit it superior calls, because this also superior calls from the deck potentially, which is another filter, which is always pretty nice. So the Starry Pop Dragon, interesting enough, is this grade 4. Yes, we're getting a grade 4 in an Excel deck. And this grade 4 is pretty unique, because look at its base power. It's a 0 power grade 4, and that comes into play with its following abilities. Continues our rearguard circle. This unit gets power plus 5k for each of your rearguards with Maggie in its card names. So if you're on Harri and you went second, you probably or hopefully have 4 Maggie onto the board, which equates to 20k power. So this grade 4 is 20k power. But at the same time, don't forget it's on the stage, which is probably a multitude of Excel circles. So if you are playing Excel 2, then it's 25. If you're playing Excel 1, which the deck most likely wants you to play, as you're going to see in the second tier, then it's 30k. And the reason why I'm saying that is because of its following abilities. Its second ability is Auto Rearguard Circle. When placed on a stage, get an imaginary gift Excel. So when we use the Pigeon, we counter +1, bounce it back, call this Starry Pop Dragon to the stage. It then immediately generates another Excel circle. So if we're Excel 1, you get another 10k on this unit. If you're Excel 2, you get another draw, which gives you even more value. So you could opt to choose that. But the reason why I state Excel 1 is because of its third ability. Because its third ability is Auto Rearguard Circle. When it attacks, if this unit's power is 40k or greater, until the end of the battle, this unit gets a critical +1 and your opponent cannot call sentinels from his or her hand. At the end of the battle, retire this unit. So not only does this card potentially is a high multi-attacker attack, because you first attack with the Pigeon, then you have 3 more attacks on your main columns, and then you have also this thing, and this will probably swing with a high number. It can have a crit and enforce a lot of guard from your opponent's hand because they cannot sentinel it, which is actually pretty good. And that basically gives Pale Moon a good finisher. Now, the reason why I say Axel 1 is the main idea behind this card is because if you go second and you use Harri's main ability, you get 4 Maggie dolls onto the board. So that's an additional 20k to this unit. You have 1 Axel circle, so that's another 10k, making it 30. The moment you place it, that's another Axel circle, so that's 40k, and you're already there. But if you win first, you can easily go up for Axel 2, because you have 1 more turn. So if you can rewrite into another Harri, then you probably have way more enough time to set up all the Axel circles, get more value, and at the same time, this unit only looks at the power when it attacks. So if you attack first with the Vanguard and you get a trigger, you can just stack it onto this dragon and you can already fulfill its condition with only just 1 or 2 Axel 2 markers and you're already done. So this dragon allows you to set up a lot of interesting things. So if we go once again back to Harri, we can see a lot of interesting things going on here. We can set up the soul by effectively guarding. We have the Pigeon that reuses units from the drop zone back into the soul, so we can set up for another turn with Harri when uses skills. And we have a lot of value behind these Maggie dolls. The only issue here is that it asks a lot to set things up here, because you need to have these units into your soul, but we have no selective soul charging. We have no soul charging in general of the deck, because everything will go from the hand or from the drop zone. And once we call these units out onto the board, they stay there. So they don't go back into soul, so we have no real effective targets for next turn for Harri. So we then once again need to set up the soul for the following turn. And we do have some couple of options, but they aren't on the most consistent side. This looks to be a very one explosive turn gameplay, but this could change with some sneaky tactics or some options. And what I mean or revert to that is we have the Bunny, the new Grade 3 Searcher. This has some multiple applications to this particular deck. One, it allows you to search for Harri, but the second thing is we can keep the Grade 3 in our hand, even if we have multiple Grade 3s, because we have multiple right targets to make our stage even more powerful. But the reason why we can keep the Harri in our hand is that we can discard one of the Maggie dolls to the drop zone, which then allows us to have a target when we go into a Grade 3 turn and we call the Pigeon to the stage. Because if we have nothing in the drop zone, we have nothing for the Pigeon to target. With the Grade 3 Searcher Bunny, we can set that up, which is actually pretty nice. Another interesting thing this Harri build allows us to do is very defensive early game. We can just guard very aggressively with the shield ticket, with our Grade 1 and all the Grade 2s, because everything will go into the soul and set everything up for us. So when we go into a very explosive turn, we're probably sitting on 1, maybe 2 damage, and that at the same time allows us to stall into the late game more efficiently if we need more resources to do that explosive turn again. So that's another option this deck allows us to do. But another thing, which basically is one of the main reasons why this card got limited to 1, is Silverthorn Dorian. That Grade 3 Dorian can be incredible with this deck, because we run 4 Maggie dolls. We have 4 Maggie dolls in this particular list. So that means we have our side columns filled, we have the stage filled, but the spot behind our Vanguard circle is basically empty. We don't need an actual booster, because thanks to the Grade 2 Prana, our Vanguard is 22k, which is solid enough. If we have that Grade 3 Dorian behind our Vanguard, at the end of our turn, we can shove our units back into the soul. That's 4 units, because the stage is empty, because the dragon retires itself. We have those units back into the soul, we draw into 2 more cards, and we're basically set for next turn. And this is another reason why I think Dorian got limited to 1, because not only is that card very abusive in Silverthorn, it's super abusive in this Harri deck. So you can probably assume that every Harri player is gonna run the 1-off Dorian, as if you open up the Dorian together with Harri, and thanks to the Bunny Grade 3 Searcher, you can now search it out. You can have a very explosive first Grade 3 turn, and then follow it up with another very explosive Grade 3 turn. So this new Harri deck is very interesting, and it has a lot of interesting concept, and it's insane in the value engine-wise. But it does lack in some consistency department, but at the same time, it's not as inconsistent as some people assume, because of the whole thing that you can just write up and that already sets up your soul. But it's also not as super consistent as other people think, because if you cannot refill the soul after you just blasted everything out and you use your effect, then a deck just stops working and it is basically dead in tracks. It's definitely on the more experienced Pale Moon players to either concoct a very unique deck that combats this issue, or very experienced Pale Moon players to play around that issue or that weakness, and they can just do what the deck needs to do. And that basically sums up everything for this new Pale Moon support. As I stated, there's a lot of information. I mean, these were 6 cards and not just 6 generic cards. This is a brand new playstyle, mechanic, and archetype in one, so that means there's a lot to talk about, and I want to basically dissect it to the best capability that I can in one single video. And there's also one reason why I want to separate the whole Vanguard 0 in a different video that we're going to talk tomorrow. And it definitely not have to do with the fact that it's like 35 degrees here and I'm sweating like crazy and I'm slowly dying inside here. But let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of these new cards for Pale Moon. What do you think of Harri? Are you very excited about this concept, about this gameplay? Are you just excited like me that you cannot wait to play these cards and actually try to build and concoct a very unique, interesting dynamic? Because Dorian is an interesting concept, but we also have Brassy Bunny and we got Midnight Bunny, which are also 2 very good grade 1s that can potentially work with this engine to set things up. So let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. And as always, guys, this video has been brought to you by lovely patrons over at patreon.com. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply do that by going over to patreon.com/Vanguard Insider and becoming a patron today. But with that said, I'm Mr. Timely, and I see you guys in the next one.